The station caretaker fed stray cats. Oblivious they were the Dragon Queen's secret agents. The maintenance corridors of the Ardent Hope smelled faintly of citrus cleanser and ionized air, a mix that always clung to Henry Voss's sleeves long after his shift ended. He moved through the gleaming artery of the ship with a soft hum on his lips, the slow rhythm of an old Terran tune from before the expansion wars. A broom in one hand, a small data pad in the other, he checked off compartments, calibrated filters, and spoke to no one. On a vessel of 22,000 beings, the janitor might as well have been a ghost, and Henry preferred it that way. He knew every vent, every echo, every strange vibration when the ship's drives shifted tone in the cold dark. What he didn't know, what he couldn't, was that 3 pairs of eyes followed him each night from the shadows between bulkheads, unblinking and luminous as molten gold. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. The first time he noticed them, it was in the hydroponic bay. He had dropped a spanner behind a coolant conduit, and bending to fetch it, found a sleek black cat staring at him from behind a crate of synthetic soil. The creature's fur shimmered faintly blue in the ship's lighting, and for a long moment it didn't move. Then another cat padded out, orange and calm, and a third, a smaller, pale ginger, sat down and blinked at him solemnly. They looked impossibly out of place among the steel ribs and vapor curls of the hydroponics deck. "Well, aren't you the oddest stowaways?" Henry murmured, crouching low. "Don't suppose you've got clearance for being here, huh?" He offered a corner of his nutrient bar. The black one sniffed, accepted, and then the 3 melted back into the ducting with eerie synchrony that left the air tingling. When he told the security drones later, they scanned for life signs, found nothing larger than a lizard, and logged his report as organic anomaly, non-threat. Henry shrugged it off. Space played tricks on the eyes. Still, the cats kept returning. At first he only caught glimpses, a tail curling around a vent, eyes glinting behind a power relay. Then they began to wait for him. He started leaving out scraps of his protein rations, crumbs from the commissary. He even fabricated a small dish from a broken parts bin and labeled it Crew Morale Supplement Unit. Each time he checked back, the dish was empty, placed neatly in the same spot. It became a quiet ritual between him and the unseen companions, a secret that brightened the endless cycle of shifts and corridors. The other crew members barely noticed the janitor, much less his hobbies. The Ardent Hope was bound for the outer colonies near the Carina Verge, carrying diplomats and scientists to a conference with the alien Vishara Confederacy. Henry was just the man who made sure no one slipped on a spilled nutrient gel, but the cats noticed everything. In the still hours of artificial night, when only the engines pulsed like a heartbeat through the hull, they prowled the decks unseen. Their eyes glowed faintly green under ultraviolet strips. Where security drones hummed past, the cats dissolved into shadows, reforming behind them like smoke pulling itself together. Sometimes when Henry hummed to himself, the smallest one mimicked the pitch, a whisper hum vibrating through the ducts. He laughed once, thinking it a quirk of the ship's systems. "You've got a tune, little one," he said, and his voice echoed warmly through the steel. Far above, on the diplomatic deck, something else listened. In the reflection of the viewing dome, a shimmer like a ripple across glass, a figure took form, tall, humanoid, her skin the color of deep emerald, with patterns that glowed faintly as bioluminescent veins. Crown-like fronds extended from her temples, shifting with each thought. The alien delegate known as Sereltar watched the janitor through the ship's environmental feeds, though none of the human technicians knew the feeds were even capable of that kind of focus. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "So the human feeds them willingly," she whispered in her own tongue, unaware of who they serve. The 3 cats far below blinked in unison, and the smallest tilted its head as if receiving her words through the hum of the engines. Henry's world was small but content. His quarters were little more than a bunk and a recycled air unit, decorated with printed photos of old Earth. An oak tree, a farmhouse, the blue arc of sky that none of the younger crew had ever seen outside simulation. He read battered paperbacks, played harmonica on break, and kept meticulous notes on the quirks of the ship. "Filter C12 makes that rattle again," he'd mutter. Or Deck 7 conduit lag, must recalibrate. It wasn't glamorous, but he took pride in the small things. Maybe that's why, when he found a faint scorch mark near the auxiliary data cable one morning, he noticed it immediately. The mark formed a spiral, delicate, precise, almost artistic. He frowned, touched it, and felt a pulse of warmth beneath the metal like a heartbeat. Now that's new. He followed the conduit back to the junction and found one of his feline friends sitting atop the access panel. The orange one. It watched him with an expression that felt too deliberate for an animal. "You wouldn't happen to know who's been drawing graffiti in my ship, would you?" he asked softly. The cat's tail swayed. Then, impossibly, the scorch pattern extended under his hand, lines etching themselves in real time as though the metal obeyed an invisible stylus. Startled, Henry drew back. All right, that's not regulation behavior for a cat. The orange creature blinked once, hopped down, and disappeared into a maintenance shaft. He reported it to no one. He wasn't sure what he'd say anyway. Something about the moment stirred an odd protectiveness in him, an intuition that whatever these cats were, they meant no harm. He'd seen enough in his years, malfunctioning drones, derelict ships, half-mad colonists talking to vacuum, to trust his instincts. So he kept feeding them. He even started talking to them more openly, telling them stories of Earth, the rivers, the storms, the way grass smelled after rain. "You'd like it," he said once. "Plenty of sunbeams to nap in. No radiation alarms, no hull rotations." The smallest cat, the ginger one, had crept close enough that its whiskers brushed his sleeve. For a heartbeat, its eyes gleamed not gold but a molten green like Seraltar's. He blinked, and the glow was gone. 2 weeks before arrival at the Verge, a security incident rippled through the ship. Someone had accessed restricted communication arrays, sending encrypted packets toward the outer system. The data logs showed impossible routing, originating from maintenance sectors with no human presence. Henry heard the gossip while mopping the commissary. "Spyware in the network," one officer whispered. "Maybe Vishara sabotage," another snorted. "Or just ghosts." "You know the janitor keeps weird pets." Henry kept his head down, heart hammering. Later, in the dark quiet of the hydroponic bay, he found all 3 cats waiting for him together, their eyes burning softly like distant stars. "I don't know what you are," he said, crouching. "But if you're in trouble, you picked a bad place to hide. They'll sweep the decks tomorrow." The black one padded forward, placed its paw on his boot, and a whisper not made of sound brushed his mind. "Help us remain unseen." Henry gasped, clutching the rail. The voice was soft, ancient, and carried an ache that pressed behind his eyes. "Who are you?" he whispered aloud. The answer came not in words but in a flicker of images, wings of light folded over worlds, scales glinting like galaxies, a crown of flame. Then silence. The cats turned as one and vanished into the ducting, leaving only a faint shimmer on the air. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat on his bunk, staring at the cleaning gloves on his hands. "You've lost it, old man," he muttered. "Talking cats' psychic visions. Next you'll start praying to the air filters." Yet when he closed his eyes, the image remained. Vast wings curved around a fragile planet, protecting rather than destroying. Something inside him refused to dismiss it. He had seen enough cruelty among humans to know kindness when it appeared, even cloaked in impossible forms. By the 3rd day, the search teams had found nothing. But Henry found evidence everywhere. Small, deliberate symbols burned into conduits, arranged like constellations. He mapped them quietly in his notebook, realizing they formed a pattern, a spiral around the ship's core reactor. Whatever message they carried, it was incomplete. An instinct told him it wasn't hostile. One night, when the corridors fell into low-light mode, he followed the signs down into the engineering bay. There, amid the humming machinery, he saw Seraltar herself. She stood beside the reactor column, the glow painting her features in silver-green light. The air shimmered, and the 3 cats materialized at her feet. Henry froze. The diplomat turned, her luminous eyes calm. "So you have cared for them," she said in flawless Terran speech, her voice melodic and cold as water. "And they for you." The cats moved closer, their forms rippling, fur becoming scales, tails lengthening into tendrils of radiant light. 10 seconds, 3 small dragons crouched before him, no larger than wolves but impossibly graceful, their wings translucent and folded close. "Holy hell," Henry whispered, backing against a railing. You're the reason the sensors—" His words faltered as the smallest dragon stepped forward, lowering its head. "We meant no harm," it said, its voice the same soft echo he'd heard before. "Our queen's emissary sought knowledge of humanity. You fed us and we saw your heart." Sariltar approached, eyes luminous with something like sorrow. "They are of my brood, born to serve me in secrecy. The monarch you name as queen is me, human. I hid them here to learn if your kind carries mercy, even in lowly places." "You have answered that question." Henry's pulse thudded in his ears. "You spied on us with cats?" he said weakly. "Efficient," she replied with a faint smile. "Unnoticed. You proved worthy of trust, Henry Voss. When we arrive at the verge, your people will stand before mine not as invaders, but as guests." He blinked, mind struggling to catch up. "All because I gave them dinner?" "Because you gave them kindness," she corrected. Then alarms blared. The intercom crackled. "Security breach, foreign entity detected in engineering." Red lights strobed. Sariltar's gaze hardened. "They will not understand," she said. The dragons unfurled their wings, shimmering like heat mirages. Henry made a choice before he even thought about it. "Follow me," he said, grabbing a maintenance hatch lever. "I know a way to the waste conduit. They'll never scan for life down there." For a moment, Sariltar hesitated, studying the frail human who smelled of cleanser and grease. Then she nodded. Together they plunged into the tunnels as boots thundered on the deck above. They moved through the bowels of the ship, steam curling around them, the low thrum of engines masking their steps. The dragons followed silently, their bodies half translucent in the dim light. Henry's lungs burned, but he didn't stop until they reached a sealed recycling chamber. "We can hide here," he said, panting. "Systems offline for maintenance till morning." Sariltar regarded him with something like wonder. "You risk your life for us, though we deceived you." He managed a tired grin. "I fix leaks for a living, ma'am. Figured I might as well patch a diplomatic one, too." She tilted her head, the bioluminescence along her cheek shifting to a softer hue, almost admiration. As the hum of pursuit faded, Henry leaned back against the wall. The smallest dragon curled near his feet, warm and faintly humming, like a cat settling to sleep. "You know," he murmured, "I always wanted a pet. Didn't think I'd end up babysitting space dragons." Sariltar's laugh was soft, melodic. "Perhaps, janitor, the universe assigns us companions we do not expect." His eyes drooped, exhaustion finally claiming him. Before sleep took him, he saw the dragon's forms flicker once more, fur returning, tails curling, and the illusion of 3 ordinary cats nestled around him in the flickering dark. Outside, the ardent hope drifted through the star-filled void toward the Carina verge, unaware that in its maintenance shafts, a janitor and a queen shared the fragile beginning of peace. But above the sleeping ship, invisible to sensors, a fleet stirred, a lattice of living light stretching across the void, awaiting the monarch's signal. And in the silence between heartbeats, Henry Voss's simple act of feeding stray cats had already begun to reshape the fate of 2 civilizations. When Henry awoke, the air in the maintenance chamber was thick with warmth and ozone, the steady pulse of the ship's reactor muffled to a soothing rhythm. For a long moment he didn't move, half certain that the memory of dragons and alien queens had been some feverish dream from a leaky oxygen seal. Then one of the cats, ginger fur glowing faintly, lifted its head from his boot and yawned, a tongue of golden light flickering between sharp, translucent teeth before fading back into the illusion of flesh. Henry exhaled slowly. "Well," he murmured, rubbing his temples, "guess I'm officially in the weird part of the galaxy." The black cat blinked, and for an instant its eyes shimmered with that same green fire he remembered from Sariltar's gaze. The queen herself stood by the bulkhead, her form draped in shadow but unmistakable, regal even among corroded pipes and flickering lights. "You dream deeply for one who has seen wonders," she said softly. Henry sat up, brushing grime from his sleeves. "Most people need coffee before they negotiate galactic peace," he muttered. "I've got disinfectant wipes and a headache." Her lips curved faintly, a gesture that might have been amusement. "Humans are remarkable creatures," she said. "You see the infinite and call it a mess to clean." He shrugged. "Somebody's got to." Then his brow furrowed. "What now?" "They'll sweep this deck soon." "If they catch you—" "They cannot," she interrupted gently. My children and I are cloaked beyond their sight. The cats flickered briefly, their forms rippling like reflections in disturbed water. But we must complete what was begun. The pattern you saw, the spiral around the reactor, it is unfinished. Without it, your ship will not reach the verge intact. That caught his full attention. Wait, what do you mean? She stepped closer, her bioluminescence dimming to a faint glow. The warp engines draw upon a resonance field your kind barely understands. A harmonic alignment error will tear the vessel apart upon re-entry into fold space. My markings stabilized the distortion, but I was discovered before it was complete. Henry blinked at her, trying to process the enormity of it. You're saying your spy mission turned into saving our ship? I do not distinguish between the two, she replied. Observation demands preservation. He snorted softly. You've got away with words, Your Majesty. A queen speaks plainly, she said, though her eyes gleamed with humor. You will help me finish the array. Me? He pointed to himself. I'm a janitor, not an engineer. You know every hidden path of this ship, she said simply. And you believe? That last word settled on him heavier than gravity. He could have argued, could have told her to find some officer or technician, but he'd seen the scorch-mark spirals and the impossible glow in her children's eyes. He had no reason to trust her, except that something in her voice carried the quiet conviction of truth. All right, he said finally. Show me what to do. Her expression softened. You honor both our species, Henry Voss. He rubbed the back of his neck. Just don't get me fired or vaporized. They moved through the hidden service conduits like ghosts, Henry leading with his work light dimmed to avoid detection. The cats padded ahead, guiding them toward the reactor's upper lattice. Along the way, Sir Eltar explained in low tones how the ship's warp core emitted harmonics that interfered with the protective resonance of nearby systems, slowly building a field instability. Your engineers compensate mathematically, she said, but they ignore the song beneath the numbers. Henry grunted. Yeah, that sounds like humans. You, however, she continued, listened. When you felt the hum through the walls, you marked it in your notes. That same sensitivity allows you to perceive what others dismiss. He gave a half smile. Guess being picky about weird noises finally pays off. They reached a narrow catwalk above the reactor bay. Below, energy coils glowed like molten rivers beneath glass, their pulses matching the heartbeat of the ship. Henry's stomach tightened. He'd cleaned this area plenty of times, but never with a royal alien entourage in tow. Sir Eltar knelt by a conduit, tracing her fingers along its surface. The pattern continues here. She exhaled a mist of luminescent vapor that settled onto the metal, forming delicate symbols like fractal frost. Hold the light steady. Henry did, watching in fascinated silence as the marks pulsed once, then dimmed. It must be linked to 3 other nodes, she murmured. I can reach 2, but the 3rd lies within your coolant labyrinth. Deck 7, he said immediately. That section's sealed for calibration. I've got clearance. She turned to him. Then our task divides. My children will accompany you. He blinked. Great, I get the dragon cats. He set off through the tunnels, the 3 creatures flowing at his heels like shadows. The hum of the ship deepened the farther they went, until he felt the vibration through his teeth. At junction C12, the ginger cat leapt ahead and pressed a paw to the bulkhead. The metal rippled like water, revealing a hidden seam. You could make fortune as maintenance inspectors, he muttered, prying the panel open. Inside, the coolant conduit glowed faint blue, the air icy against his skin. All right, what now? The black cat's eyes flared. Trace the spiral, came the telepathic whisper. Your hands know the motion, he hesitated. I'm not exactly fluent in alien art. Trust, the voice urged. So he drew his gloved finger across the metal, following the faint lines already scorched there. As he completed the curve, light bloomed beneath his touch, white mingling with green, and the conduit thrummed with a pure, resonant tone that made the air itself vibrate. The cats purred in harmony, their bodies momentarily translucent. A sudden hiss shattered the quiet. Security drones glided around the corner, red optics sweeping the passage. Unregistered life signs detected, one intoned. Henry's heart lurched. Run! He hissed to the cats, but they didn't move. Instead, their forms blurred, merging into a single shimmer that enveloped him. To his astonishment, his entire body faded into the background like heat distortion. The drones passed within a meter, sensors sweeping straight through him without alarm. When they were gone, the shimmer dissolved. Henry gasped. You cloaked me." The smallest cat tilted its head. "We share our veil with those we trust." He shook his head, half laughing. "Remind me to buy you all the tuna in the galaxy." They rejoined Sereltar near the reactor's heart. Her hands hovered above the central array, drawing energy from the air itself. "The alignment nears completion," she said. "But the captain's crew will soon notice the fluctuations." As if on cue, the ship's intercom crackled. "Engineering report." "Reactor readings unstable, possible sabotage." Henry winced. "Well, that's my alarm clock." Sereltar's expression tightened. "We must finish. Once harmonized, the field will stabilize beyond interference." She placed one hand on the reactor casing and extended the other toward him. Together. Henry hesitated only a moment before grasping it. Her skin was cool, almost metallic, yet pulsed faintly with life. Energy surged through him, an impossible sensation of sound and color interwoven. He glimpsed stars folding, songs of creation, memories that weren't his. When it ended, the chamber glowed softly gold, and the reactor's hum steadied to a perfect pitch. Then the blast doors slammed open. Armed security poured in, weapons raised. "Step away from the core," the lead officer barked. Henry lifted his hands instinctively, still dazed. "Wait, she's not the enemy." But Sereltar stood calm. The cats crouched at her feet like living flames. "For you see only what fear allows," she said quietly. The officer sneered. "Contain her." A net of crackling plasma arced toward her, but before it struck, Henry moved without thinking. He grabbed a fire suppression nozzle, slammed it into the control conduit, and sprayed a jet of compressed coolant into the air. Frost burst across the floor, sensors shrieking, visibility vanishing in a blizzard of vapor. "Run!" he shouted. Sereltar hesitated, then swept her hand in a wide arc. A pulse of emerald light filled the chamber, hurling the stunned guards backward as if by wind. Together they plunged through the side maintenance hatch, alarms wailing behind them. They didn't stop until they reached the observation dome high above the main decks. The dome stretched wide, stars glittering beyond transparent alloy. Henry leaned against the railing, gasping. "You realize," he said between breaths, "I'm officially going to be on every wanted list in the fleet." Sereltar regarded him, her expression unreadable. "Then we share a burden. My interference in your vessel's systems would be deemed espionage by your command." She turned her gaze to the stars. "Yet it was necessary. To save us," he said softly. She nodded. "To save both our people. The verge is not merely a destination, it is a convergence. The storm there is the remnant of a collapsed gate. Without the harmonic correction, your ship would have torn the veil between realms." He blinked at her. "And now?" "Now," she said, "you have bound your fate to mine." Before he could respond, a tremor shook the dome. The comm crackled. "All crew to stations." External anomaly detected. Massive energy surge ahead. Henry's stomach dropped. Through the glass, a storm of light unfolded in the distance, twisting like a whirlpool across the stars. "That the verge?" he asked. "Yes," Sereltar whispered. "The wound between dimensions." Lightning-like tendrils stretched outward, brushing the void. "Your reactor's new alignment should shield you, but only if maintained." He frowned. "Meaning someone's got to babysit the reactor all the way through?" "Precisely." She turned to him. "You understand its song now. You can guide it." His mouth fell open. "You want me to what, sing to the warp drive?" "In essence," she said serenely. "Your tone carries the resonance key. You harmonized with me." He stared at her, then laughed weakly. "Well, Mom, that's a first." They returned to engineering amid controlled chaos. Officers shouted orders, readouts flickered red. No one paid attention to the janitor slipping to the lower console. Sereltar remained hidden, her form refracted into invisibility. Henry placed his hands on the panel. The hum beneath his palms pulsed erratically, like a heart under strain. He closed his eyes, recalling the harmony from before. Slowly he hummed, a low, steady note that vibrated through the metal. The sound grew, deepened, layered with subtle overtones. Around him, systems flickered, stabilizing. The core's light steadied. Engineers gaped. "What the hell?" someone whispered. "Reactors stabilizing," another shouted. Henry kept humming until the readings turned green. Then he sagged back, trembling but smiling faintly. Above, the storm raged, but the ardent hope held course. When the bridge confirmed stability, the captain's voice echoed through the intercom. Equal parts awe and confusion. Engineering, whatever you did, keep doing it. Henry glanced toward the shadows where he knew Sereltar stood invisible. She gave a small nod, unseen by all but him. The path is safe now, her voice whispered in his mind. Rest, human, he managed a grin. You first, Majesty. Hours later, as the ship drifted through the last eddies of the verge, Henry sat alone in the maintenance corridor, exhaustion weighing him down. The 3 cats appeared quietly, curling around his legs. You 3, he murmured, owe me one hell of an explanation. The smallest raised its head. So you have already received it, the voice replied gently. Understanding follows compassion. He chuckled softly. Maybe, but next time start with a thank you. The black cat's eyes gleamed. Then thank you, Henry Voss, Keeper of Paths. He froze. That a title? A bond, it said. So you have walked with dragons. Sereltar joined him moments later, her projection faint and wavering. The storm has passed. We near the Carina verge. She looked almost tired. My kind will see this act as trespass. Yours may see it as betrayal. Yet perhaps between those shadows light may grow. Henry looked up at her. You know, for a queen you sound a lot like a janitor. She blinked, puzzled. Cleaning up everyone else's mess, he explained. That earned him a rare, full smile. Then perhaps we are kindred. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched into calm once more. What neither of them saw was the silent transmission flickering from the ship's antenna, encoded, alien, and carried on the very resonance they had balanced. Far away, something vast stirred in reply, its shape lost in nebular fire. The monarch's act of mercy had not gone unnoticed, and the ripples of Henry Voss's compassion were only beginning to spread. The ardent hope glided through the silken dark beyond the Carina verge, her hull streaked with faint auroras from the residual fold storms. For the first time in weeks, the hum beneath Henry's boots sounded steady, whole. He moved through the corridors like a man walking through a dream he'd accidentally repaired, with a wrench and a song. Crew members nodded to him now, curious, almost deferential, murmuring rumors about the janitor who saved the reactor. He didn't correct them. The fewer questions about dragon queens and telepathic cats, the better. Still, every time he passed a vent or dim corridor, he half expected to see those familiar glowing eyes waiting in the dark, watching him with that uncanny stillness that meant he was not forgotten. When the announcement came, entering diplomatic orbit around Carina Prime, the entire ship seemed to exhale. Henry finished scrubbing a scuff off the observation deck floor and looked out at the planet below. Carina Prime shimmered like a jewel suspended in black velvet, oceans tinged with silver where the system's twin suns reflected. Pretty place, he murmured. Hope they've got less dust. Beside him, the smallest cat materialized, tail curling lazily. Our queen summons you, it said quietly. He sighed. She couldn't just leave a note. The cat blinked, unimpressed. Matters of realm require your presence. Henry chuckled and followed, grabbing his utility pack. Guess even janitors get promoted. They met in one of the upper observation galleries, a chamber sealed to all but the Queen's personal clearance. Sereltar stood before the panoramic glass, her reflection haloed in starlight. Without her diplomatic facade, she seemed both more human and more terrible, graceful lines of emerald and silver shifting like the play of tides. You've done well, she said when he entered. The ship's stability endures, and my children report that your species has not sought to weaponize what it does not yet understand. Henry rubbed his neck. They barely understand what a mop does. I think we're safe. Her lips curved faintly. And yet you wield that ignorance as kindness. Tell me, Henry Voss, what drives you to care for creatures you cannot name? He met her gaze. Because somebody should. Out here everything's cold metal and equations. Feed something alive and it remembers you're alive too. For a heartbeat she looked genuinely moved. Such sentiment would unmake empires, she whispered. Then her expression turned grave. There is more you must know. The harmonic field we stabilized did more than preserve your vessel. It awakened attention. She lifted a slender hand, and the stars beyond the glass flickered, resolving into a holographic projection of space, a lattice of glowing filaments stretching across light years. These are the resonance lines that bind our realms. The disturbance drew entities older than both our peoples, beings that dwell between dimensions. They have begun to stir. Henry stared. You mean more dragons? Not dragons, she said softly. They're precursors, the architects of creation, long dormant. To them our existence is noise. If they awaken fully, they may quiet the song entirely. He frowned. Meaning, end everything? Yes. The room seemed colder suddenly. Henry shifted uneasily. So how do we unring a cosmic alarm bell? By completing what was begun, she said. Her convergence beacon at the verge must be harmonized anew, tuned to a frequency that soothes rather than summons. My people guard the relic there, but they will not welcome me. I am considered heretic for consorting with humankind. You want me to come along, he guessed. I want you to sing, she corrected gently. The harmonics recognized your voice once. They will again. Alone, my resonance would provoke hostility. With you, perhaps, balance. He stared at her, incredulous. You're asking a janitor to duet with the universe. I'm asking a man who listens, she said simply. He didn't have much of a choice. Within the hour, they took a shuttle down to Carina Prime, an oceanic world whose surface shimmered with bioluminescent reefs. The landing bay greeted them with polite confusion. Henry's clearance came from engineering, not diplomacy. Yet Sereltar's authority silenced all objections. They disembarked into humid air laced with salt and ozone. Vast crystalline towers rose along the coast, each one pulsing with faint rhythm, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. Home to your people? He asked. To my vanguard, she said. They will test us. They didn't wait long. As they crossed a bridge of living glass, figures emerged from the mist, tall beings like Sereltar but armored in scales of cobalt and gold, spears of condensed light in hand. Their leader stepped forward, voice a resonant chord. Monarch Sereltar of the Verdant Court, he intoned. You were exiled for communion with the lesser species. You return at peril. She inclined her head. The peril is not mine, Orunvar. The breach awakens. The warrior's gaze flicked to Henry. And this creature? The Harmonic Keeper, she replied. Without him the veil collapses. A ripple of murmurs swept through the ranks. Henry raised a hand awkwardly. High Maintenance Crew Level 2 clearance. Orunvar's expression didn't change. He stinks of human. That's disinfectant, Henry muttered. Mostly. Sereltar's tone sharpened. Judge him not by scent but by deed. He steadied the ardent hope with nothing but his voice. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Orunvar lowered his spear. If the harmony wills it, the beacon shall test him. But know this, monarch, if he falters, his flesh will unravel to dust. Henry grimaced. No pressure, then. Sereltar's eyes softened. Trust the song, Henry. It remembers kindness. He exhaled slowly. You and your poetry. They entered the beacon temple, a towering spire grown from coral crystal, humming with deep, resonant tones that vibrated through bone. At its center hung a sphere of liquid light, rotating slowly above a chasm. Sereltar approached it, gesturing for Henry to stand beside her. The frequencies intertwine, she murmured. I will anchor the lower harmonic. You must sustain the upper. He swallowed hard. What happens if I'm off-key? Then existence falters briefly, she said, almost too lightly. Comforting, he muttered. As she began the chant, the air rippled. The sphere brightened, threads of energy reaching toward them. Henry closed his eyes and let instinct guide him. The hum of the ship, the pulse of the reactor, the way his breath had matched the rhythm of the stars. A note rose in his throat, low at first, then stronger, blending with her voice into something vast and wordless. The sphere responded, stabilizing into a steady rotation. For a few heartbeats, everything aligned, human and alien, machine and cosmos. He felt the song reach outward, smoothing unseen turbulence, soothing whatever ancient minds stirred beyond. Then the light fractured. A shockwave of pressure knocked him backward. Sereltar cried out as energy flared around her, dragging her toward the sphere. Henry lunged, grabbing her wrist. What's happening? They hear us, she gasped. The precursors, they answer. The chamber filled with a blinding radiance, and from within it came shapes, vague, colossal eyes like novas, staring through dimensions. Henry felt his thoughts peeling away, replaced by alien vastness. Tiny flame, a voice thundered within his skull. You sing upon our silence. He fought to speak. We didn't mean to wake you, just... Keep things quiet. Why preserve imperfection? The voice rumbled. All songs end. Not this one, he shouted. Not if we keep listening. The presence paused, an eternity compressed into a breath. Then slowly the radiance dimmed. Then sing, small flame, remind the dark why it burns. The light receded, leaving silence broken only by their ragged breathing. Sereltar collapsed to her knees. Henry knelt beside her. You okay? She looked at him, awe and exhaustion mingling in her gaze. They spared us, because of you. He shook his head. Because we listened together. When they emerged, the sky above Carina Prime shimmered with new constellations, the resonance lines rearranged into patterns that hummed softly, harmonious and calm. Olrenvar and his guards knelt as they approached. The song endures, he said reverently. The heretic speaks truth. Sereltar inclined her head. The heretic learns from a janitor. Henry winced. Please don't make that my epitaph. She smiled faintly. Too late. Back aboard the Ardent Hope, things moved quickly. The diplomatic summit proceeded as planned, though whispers of strange lights over the planet circulated among the crew. Henry returned to his duties, pretending life was normal. Yet he could feel the hum of the ship different now, richer, layered with a tone only he and perhaps the dragons could hear. At night, he found the 3 cats waiting outside his quarters. So, he said, crouching, we good? The black one purred. The balance holds. The monarch owes you life, he smiled. Ah, call it even. You saved mine too. The ginger cat tilted its head. You are changed. He looked down at his hands, noticing faint luminescent traces that pulsed with his heartbeat. Guess so. Later that night, as he drifted towards sleep, he dreamed of stars turning to eyes and wings of light folding over him. A voice whispered through the dream, not Sereltar's, not the dragon's, but older, deeper. Keep cleaning, little flame. Even the universe needs tending. He woke with tears on his cheeks and laughter in his chest. By morning, orders came from command. Henry Voss was to be transferred to the diplomatic division as technical liaison. He stared at the message for a long minute, then muttered, they promoted a janitor to ambassador. When he told Sereltar, she only smiled. Titles matter less than deeds. You will teach them to listen. He grinned. Hope they're good at sweeping. Yet peace was never simple. From the edges of the verge came reports of anomalies, ships vanishing, frequencies distorted. During a routine inspection, Henry found scorch marks in familiar spirals etched along the communication relays. His stomach sank. The pattern was wrong, fractured. When he traced it, he felt not harmony but hunger. The cats emerged silently behind him. You sense it too? He asked. The black one's voice was grave. The song has listeners still awake. Not all were soothed. He cursed softly. Figures. He sought Sereltar immediately. She listened, expression unreadable. Then the calm is only the surface. The deeper ones test the melody. How do we stop them? He asked. We cannot, she said quietly. But we can strengthen the harmony. Others must learn as you did, and he frowned. Others, you mean people like me? Humans who hear, she said. And perhaps those beyond humanity. Empathy is the only key that echoes across species. He rubbed his chin. You're talking about building a choir. A choir of listeners, she agreed. One that sings not of conquest but of care. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Guess I'd better start rehearsals. That evening, the Ardent Hope departed orbit, heading toward the next colony. Henry stood in the observation dome, watching Carina Prime fade behind them. The stars ahead shimmered faintly, like notes on invisible strings. The cats sat at his side, tails curled. All right, he said softly. Let's keep the universe tidy. The black one's eyes gleamed. Until all songs are clean, he laughed. That's the spirit. But far beyond, in the deep folds of space where light itself forgot to travel, something vast shifted again, listening not in wrath, but curiosity. A new tone had entered the symphony, fragile, defiant, human. And in that fragile sound, the cosmos found reason to pause. The Ardent Hope sailed between systems like a quiet hymn, its hull still marked with faint spirals of energy, where the Dragon Queen's resonance had rewritten the ship's song. Henry Voss walked those decks with a new gravity in his step. The uniform patch on his chest now read, Technical Liaison, Diplomatic Division, but he still carried his old janitor's kit, wrenches, scrub pads, and a small tin of treats for the cats. Most days he couldn't tell if he was maintaining machinery or peace. Sometimes the difference felt smaller than a breath. The crew had stopped whispering behind his back. They just watched him differently now, with that wary respect people give to someone who's done the impossible and might do it again if the lights flicker wrong. He found himself called into more meetings than mop duty. Engineers asked him to explain the resonance harmonics he couldn't name. Diplomats wanted him to recount the encounter on Carina Prime, word for word. Commanders wanted to know what Sereltar intended next. Henry always gave the same answer. She intends understanding. They usually frowned, unsatisfied. Only the cats seemed content with simplicity. They followed him faithfully, slipping through vents and shadowed corners, sometimes curling up in his quarters like living embers. When he fed them, they purred with a tone that harmonized faintly with the ship's heartbeat. "You three are the best co-workers I've had," he told them once. "Even if you outrank me." The ginger one flicked its tail. "Rank is a human delusion," it said lazily. Henry grinned. "You've been talking to your boss too much." The peace at Carina Prime spread quickly across the verge. The Vishara Confederacy sent envoys bearing translucent gifts that hummed when touched. The human delegation, suddenly humble, signed accords promising shared exploration rather than expansion. For a while, hope felt tangible, an architecture built from cooperation instead of conquest. But Henry had learned to distrust perfect quiet. One night, as he performed a routine inspection near the communications array, the black cat tensed beside him, fur bristling. "Something's wrong," he whispered. The cat's eyes glowed red instead of gold. "A discord," it said. He followed its gaze to the main transmission console, where faint scorch spirals pulsed under the panel. "Not again," he muttered. The lines glowed with a darker hue, crimson instead of Sereltar's emerald. When he touched them, the hum beneath his fingers felt sharp like broken glass. "They're back," he breathed. "The precursors." The cat's voice dropped to a low growl. "Not the old ones. Their echo." By morning, strange signals rippled through the Verge network, patterns that scrambled navigation and induced vertigo in sensitive species. Sereltar summoned him to the observation dome, her expression troubled. "The song we repaired has been imitated," she said. "Something mimics harmony, but its intention is hollow." Henry frowned. "A fake peace tune?" "A lure," she corrected. "It calls the sleeping architects anew." He rubbed his temples. "So what? Someone's trying to wake them on purpose." She nodded grimly. "Some of my kin, perhaps. There are those who believe rebirth through destruction is divine. They call themselves the Ascendants." He exhaled through his teeth. "You've got extremists. Great, even dragons have fan clubs for apocalypse." She met his eyes. "They have begun weaving their false resonance into your relay stations. If unchecked, both our species will vanish." He folded his arms. "Then we'd better clean house." They worked without rest. Henry and the cats moved from deck to deck, scanning for corrupted harmonics. Where they found them, he countered with his own tone, low, steady, imperfectly human but sincere. The cats amplified him, their bodies glowing with soft light as they purged the crimson patterns. It felt less like fighting, and more like convincing the ship to remember itself. Still, for every mark they cleansed, new ones appeared. Sereltar's communications with her people grew strained. Some of her emissaries refused her calls entirely. "They see my bond with humankind as betrayal," she admitted one night, her voice barely above a whisper. "They would rather burn the universe clean than share it." Henry looked at her and said, "Then they never cleaned anything real. You don't fix a mess by blowing up the room." The crisis came 3 days later. The Ardent Hope intercepted a distress signal from the colony ship Vigilant, Dawn. Its last transmission spoke of whispers in the hull and voices calling from the void. The coordinates pointed near the edge of the fold storm, exactly where the precursor resonance had first been felt. Henry joined Sereltar on the response shuttle, against orders. "You're not trained for hazard zones," the captain protested. Henry only shrugged. "Neither's the universe, apparently." The cats followed, silent as shadows. The shuttle dropped from fold space into chaos, currents of light twisting through blackness, debris drifting like snow. The Vigilant Dawn floated dead ahead, its lights flickering, hull covered in faint crimson spirals that pulsed like breathing wounds. Inside, silence reigned. No bodies, no motion, just the soft hum of systems running themselves. Henry's boots echoed on metal floors as he followed Sir Eltar through the corridors. "Feels wrong," he muttered. "Like walking inside a thought that doesn't want you here." The Queen nodded, scanning the walls. "The ship is dreaming the wrong dream." They reached the bridge and froze. A figure stood before the main viewport, humanoid but composed entirely of shifting red light. When it turned, its face was a mirror of Sir Eltar's. "Sister," it said, voice harmonized in eerie distortion. "You sing with vermin?" Sir Eltar stiffened. "Orunvel," she whispered. "You lead the Ascendants." The being smiled cruelly. "We restore purity. You pollute the song with pity." Henry stepped forward. "You know, most family feuds don't endanger galaxies." Orunvel's eyes burned into him. "And you are the mouth of corruption." He raised a hand and crimson energy coiled outward. The cats leapt forward, intercepting the blast. Light and sound collided, the air vibrating with unbearable resonance. Henry's ears rang, his vision fracturing into shards of color. Sir Eltar shouted something, her voice lost in the roar. Instinct took over. Henry grabbed a nearby tool, a resonance calibrator, and slammed it against the floor, amplifying his own voice through its frequency nodes. He hummed, low and rough, no melody, just stubborn noise. The crimson aura flickered. "You defy us with static," Orunvel hissed. "With truth," Henry rasped. "Harmony's not perfect. It's everything trying anyway." The words weren't poetry, but the sound carried weight. The false resonance faltered, destabilized by his off-key defiance. Sir Eltar seized the moment, unleashing a surge of pure emerald light that enveloped her brother. The ship screamed, a metallic wail as the crimson marks burned away. When the light faded, Orunvel was gone. Only a whisper lingered. "We are not undone. Only delayed." The cats collapsed, their forms flickering. Henry fell to his knees, chest heaving. "Tell me we won," he managed. Sir Eltar knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "For now." They stabilized the vigilant Dawn and set it adrift in quarantine orbit, systems scrubbed of corruption. On the return flight, Henry stared at his reflection in the viewport. His eyes glimmered faintly green now, threads of resonance alive beneath the surface. "You're changing me," he said quietly. Sir Eltar didn't deny it. "When two songs intertwine long enough, they become one composition," he sighed. "So what happens when I go home? Do I hum myself to death?" She smiled sadly. "Perhaps you hum yourself into something greater." Back aboard the Ardent Hope, the aftermath settled heavily. Command questioned everything, his actions, her authority, the cat's existence. But when the reactor logs revealed that his improvised tone had neutralized the false frequency, even the skeptics fell silent. They called it the Voss resonance. Henry groaned at the name. "Sounds like a bad jazz band," Sir Eltar corrected him softly. "It sounds like hope." Still, peace remained fragile. The Ascendants had vanished into the void, leaving behind whispers of more ships touched by crimson. That night, unable to sleep, Henry wandered the maintenance corridors. The ship's hum followed him like a companion. He stopped by the hydroponic bay, the place where it had all begun, and found the smallest cat waiting atop a crate. "Hey, little one," he said. "We still cleaning up messes?" The cat's voice echoed faintly in his mind. "Always, but you sing clearer now." He smiled. "Practice makes perfect." "No," the cat said gently. "Practice makes meaning." He reached out and scratched behind its ear. "You sound like your queen." "We sound like you," it replied, and vanished into shadow. Later, as he sat alone in his cabin, Sir Eltar appeared at his doorway. "May I?" she asked. He gestured to the chair. "It's your ship as much as mine." She regarded him quietly. "You saved my brother in a way. His essence was consumed by discord, yet your song freed him from madness before the end." He looked down. "Didn't feel like saving." Compassion rarely does. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the steady hum of the engines. Finally she said, "The Ascendants will return. But when they do, I would have you at my side, not as servant, but as ally." He chuckled softly. "Guess I'm overdue for a promotion." She smiled. "You misunderstand. In my culture, to share resonance is to share sovereignty." He blinked. "You mean like partners?" "In every sense that matters." He didn't answer right away. Outside, stars slid past like slow sparks. "I'm just a janitor," he said finally. "You're a monarch." She leaned forward, eyes luminous. And yet the universe listened to you. He smiled faintly. Maybe because I listened first. They sat there until ship's dawn, two beings bound by a song, neither fully understood but both refused to stop singing. When the first alarms of a new fold disturbance rang through the ship the next morning, neither flinched. "Round two?" Henry asked. Scifi rose gracefully. "Round two." The cats materialized at their feet, eyes gleaming with determination. Together they walked toward the bridge. Not saviors, not heroes. Just caretakers of a fragile harmony still finding its tune among the stars. The alarms on the Ardent Hope blared in a rhythm that felt almost alive, pulsing, uneven, like the heartbeat of something vast waking from a bad dream. Henry Voss stood on the bridge beside Scifi, watching as the holographic display filled with crimson fractals, spreading through fold space like cracks in glass. "That's not just turbulence," he muttered. "That's music," Scifi nodded grimly. The Ascendants have begun the final verse. They seek to merge the false harmony with the true, to overwrite creation itself. The captain turned to her, pale. "You're saying this resonance could rewrite matter?" "Rewrite meaning," she replied softly. "Matter will follow." Henry ran a hand through his hair. "So we're fighting cosmic plagiarism." No one laughed, but the corner of Scifi's mouth twitched. A fitting metaphor, they steal the melody of life to make it theirs. Orders flew. Power rerouted to the reactor. Shields raised. Communications jammed by interference. Henry leaned over the main console, scanning readings he barely understood but somehow felt. "They're broadcasting through the subharmonic field," he said. "Same frequency as the stabilizer we set up after Carina Prime." "Then they use our own harmony against us," Scifi murmured. "Poetic irony. More like bad feedback," he said. The cats appeared silently, their forms halfway between fur and flame. The black one spoke first. "The source lies within the fold stream's heart, a beacon built from corrupted song." The ginger one added, "It calls to the architects, demanding rebirth." Henry frowned. "Then we need to shut it up." Within the hour they launched a small strike vessel, barely more than engines and resonance shielding. Henry insisted on going. The captain protested. Scifi overruled him. "He alone can navigate the interference," she said. "His attunement binds to the real harmony. Without him we would drift blind." Henry glanced at her. "You're really putting the fate of 2 galaxies on a janitor with stage fright." She smiled faintly. "Every song begins with one note," he sighed. "All right then, let's hit the high one." The cats took their positions around the cockpit, their eyes glowing in unison. The shuttle detached, diving into the fold storm where light turned to liquid and stars sang in distortion. Fold space was chaos made visible, currents of color folding inward, voices whispering equations older than time. Henry gripped the controls as reality bent around them. "Feels like steering through a dream while drunk," he muttered. "Stay centered," Scifi said calmly beside him. "The mind shapes the path here." "Great," he said. "Hope my mind's got GPS." The cats extended their wings, real wings now, shimmering membranes of energy that steadied the ship's course. Through the haze, a shape emerged, a colossal structure floating in the void, pulsing with red light. It looked alive, a heart of crystal veins throbbing to a rhythm that made Henry's bones ache. "The false beacon," Scifi said. "It sings of ending." As they approached, the ship's sensors screamed. Patterns cascaded across the display, fractal repetitions of his own resonance signature. "They copied me," Henry realized aloud. My tone from the reactor twisted. "You are their key," Scifi said. "Your voice anchored the harmony. Now it anchors the corruption. You must reclaim it." He blinked. "You want me to outsing a cosmic death cult?" "Precisely," he stared. "So you're serious? Always?" The cats uncoiled from their perches, hovering mid-air. "We will channel you," the black one said. "The queen will amplify. The melody must not falter." He swallowed hard, closed his eyes, and listened. The false beacon's song pressed against his skull, beautiful and monstrous, promising release from struggle, perfection through silence. It reminded him of loneliness, of the nights mopping decks while no one saw him, of thinking he'd been invisible all his life. But behind that thought came another memory, a small cat blinking at him from a vent, hungry and curious, the way it had purred when he'd offered food, the way the universe had changed, because he'd bothered to care. He opened his mouth and a single low hum escaped, a note rough around the edges, painfully human. The beacon shuddered. "You are not enough," whispered the crimson voice in his mind. "You are dust." He sang louder. Scifi joined him, her tone pure and resonant, weaving around his imperfections like silk around wire. Together their voices clashed with the beacon's false harmony. The cats formed a circle of light, wings beating in sync. The void trembled. "They fight you," Scifi warned. Henry gritted his teeth. "Then they'll have to clean up after me." He drew breath and shifted key, letting his voice crack, falter, recover, every imperfection deliberate. The false melody tried to smooth it, to erase the flaws, but that only made his truth stand out sharper. "Harmony isn't perfect," he shouted. "It's trying again after breaking." His words became sound, his sound became force. The beacon pulsed wildly, fissures crawling across its surface. Then came the backlash. Energy lashed out, slamming into the shuttle. Panels exploded in sparks. Scifi cried out, clutching her side. The cat strained to maintain the veil. Henry's vision blurred. "Come on," he whispered. "Hold together." The beacon flared again, brighter, feeding on their resistance. In desperation, he reached across the console and took Scifi's hand. "Sing with me," he said. "Not as queen, not as alien, just as you." Her eyes widened, then softened. She nodded once. Their voices merged completely. No distinction between human and dragon, sound and light. The melody that emerged was neither perfection nor chaos, but compassion, messy, honest, alive. The beacon shattered. A wave of energy rippled outward, sweeping through fold space like dawn through darkness. The crimson faded to gold. For a heartbeat, Henry saw vast shapes in the distance. The architects themselves, ancient and luminous, pausing in their slumber to listen. "Little flames," a voice murmured. "We remember." Then the vision faded and the storm stilled. Silence followed. The shuttle drifted amid glowing debris, systems flickering. Henry coughed, tasting copper. "Still here?" he asked weakly. The cats shimmered, their forms dim but intact. "The false song is ended," said the black one. He turned to Scifi. She lay slumped, a faint smile on her lips, her body flickering between solid and light. "You did it," he whispered. "We did," she breathed. "But the cost—" Her voice faltered. He grasped her hand tighter. "Don't you dare. We just fixed the universe. You're not bailing now." She looked at him with eyes full of stars. "When harmony resets, something must fade. The beacon's unmaking draws from us both. You live. I return to the source." "No," he said fiercely. "We share the song." "That's what you said." "And we do," she whispered. "Always." Her form dissolved into radiant mist, flowing into the beacon's remnants until only light remained. The cats bowed their heads, their scales glistening with tears of fire. Henry reached toward the fading glow, voice breaking. "Scifi." The mist pulsed once, then drifted into him, warm, aching, infinite. For a moment he heard her voice inside his thoughts. "Keep tending, Henry, keep cleaning the stars." Then she was gone. He didn't remember much of the return. The shuttle was found days later by a search fleet tracing the stabilized fold stream. They said he was unconscious but unharmed, the cabin filled with faint green light that refused to dissipate for hours. When he awoke in medbay, the captain stood over him. "You saved us again," she said. "And her?" he asked. "The monarch?" The captain hesitated. "We detected no sign." He stared at the ceiling, feeling the hum of the ship steady under his palm. "She's here," he said softly. Just quieter. Months passed. The Ardent Hope became the flagship of a new alliance, the Harmonic Accord, uniting human and Vishara efforts to study resonance phenomena. Henry declined every promotion offered. He returned to maintenance, insisting the ship needed someone who still listened to its creaks. The crew accepted that. They called him the Keeper, half reverent, half teasing. Sometimes, late at night, he'd find one of the cats waiting in the corridor. They'd pad silently beside him as he made his rounds. "You miss her too," he'd say. The ginger one always answered the same. "She is not gone. She hums through you." He could believe that. Sometimes, when the engines cycled down to idle, he swore he heard her laugh, soft like wind through crystal leaves. He kept the beacon's fragments locked in a containment field near hydroponics, their light pulsing faintly green. "You're safe now," he'd tell them. "No more bad songs." The younger engineers thought he was joking. The cats knew better. Years later, when the next generation of explorers launched beyond the verge, they carried with them a small plaque engraved with words he'd written in a moment of tired honesty. Harmony isn't perfection. It's persistence with compassion. No one argued with that. The accord grew. The precursors slept. And somewhere between stars, faint music lingered, the echo of a human janitor who once fed stray cats and accidentally taught gods how to listen. But the story didn't end there. One night, long after he'd grown grey, Henry walked the silent decks of a new vessel, the Sereltar's Grace, built from both human alloys and dragon crystal. He paused at the viewing dome, where the cosmos spread endless and inviting. The cats appeared as they always did, silent and watchful. "You know," he said, leaning on the railing, "I still half expect her to walk in and start lecturing me about resonance alignment." The black one tilted its head. "Would you listen?" he smiled. "Probably. Maybe." "Then you already do," it replied. A faint glow blossomed beyond the glass, green and gold intertwining. Out of the light a silhouette emerged, graceful and luminous, wings folding like petals. Sereltar's voice filled the chamber, gentle and proud. "You kept singing." He blinked, heart pounding. You're real." "I am remembrance given shape," she said. "The architects granted me echo, for your song reminded them of their first dream." His throat tightened. "I thought I lost you." "You cannot lose what you carry," she said, touching her hand to his chest. "My resonance lives in your heart, Henry Voss, and yours in mine. Through eternity." The cats bowed deeply, their eyes reflecting the light of two souls forever intertwined. He laughed softly, tears bright on his cheeks. "Guess this means the universe passed inspection." "It is never done," she replied. "There will always be dust on the stars." "Then I'll keep cleaning," he said. "With you," she smiled, radiant. "Always." Outside, the stars sang, a melody vast and gentle woven from countless voices. The architects slept peacefully, lulled by the harmony of imperfection. Humanity thrived. Dragons soared once more. And in the quiet spaces between worlds, the hum of compassion continued. For in every flicker of light, in every echo of sound, there lived the proof that one simple act, a human feeding stray cats, could realign the destiny of galaxies.